Good morning, Warriors. Back with another episode of Vigor Warriors 2 and the 1% Club. Hope you guys are doing well today. Hope you guys had a nice weekend and hope you guys are continuing on your purpose. I took actually a couple days off just to kind of get ready for the end of the semester with finals and all kinds of stuff going on. And I wanted to make sure that we got that stuff taken care of. And so we're back again Monday morning here. And today I think is December 12th. I have to take a look at my watch here. Yes, it is December 12th. All right. So thank you for all the comments. Actually, I'm at the point where I have to kind of just split these up a little bit, giving quick shout outs to people. So I'm only going to do a few every day and just kind of do it that way. So I want to save us some time as well. But first of all, thank you for all your comments, likes. It's unbelievable. I just feel very blessed and humbled that that people are catching these ideas and trying to run with them and kind of think about these a little bit. And that's the whole thing we're trying to do, is get people to think about this and realize that there is a lot of truth with things, that the reality is not always as it appears. And we see this a lot happen nowadays, where people are really realizing the truth of situations and not just what we're being told. And I think that's really important to kind of realize. So quick shout outs here. SICC Cross Side, thank you, my friend. I appreciate your comments. Create Health Inspire, KTE, thank you. Drunk Vigio, thank you. Thomas Van Der Smam, thank you. Optical Man, again, some great comments. King Uche, Enlightened, Leo, and Daniel Fatone. So thank you guys for your comments. As I said, I got a bunch to catch up with, but I wanted to make sure I got those in today. And then our schedule for the week is we're going to talk about one today called Flirting on SR. So we'll talk about that. So flirting on semen retention. But we have a good one tomorrow coming up on marriage. I have a bunch of different comments with that. And then we also have one on nocturnal emissions. Somebody's asking, a few people asked about that as well. And then one more about women will look at you even though other men are with them. So we're going to have to talk about that a little bit too near the end of the week. And so, and then also we'll do another one on Friday too. Okay, so let's talk about this. And I think DSM Tech had a good comment. And I want to kind of comment on it because I think there's a lot of information we have to kind of think about here as we deal with this. Now, and I don't want to go into the marriage one at all, but we're going to talk about a little bit of relationships in this one. So the key, my friends, is obviously we're talking about not losing energy. And that's important because what's going to happen is you're going to become less of a man. You're going to be less of a man if you're losing energy all the time and you're releasing energy. Like I said, back in the old days, this wasn't as much of an issue, and we'll talk about this with technology one of these days this week, I think. And technology has made it easier to get access to pictures and all this kind of stuff and talk with people and hook up with people, all those type of things, which allows you then to get into more tempting situations, and those things, can hurt you. And that's why we talk about having one person instead of having multiple people. And we'll talk about that more with the marriage situation. But the one thing to realize, and this is, and Kendler, I don't have the book in front of me, but a person asked about this too. Kendler's, thing is always very important because you want to look at the idea that he's pushing there. Now, like I said, I've shown the book many times called The Fountain of Youth, and you may want to try those exercises. I would highly recommend those, but if you don't want to try them, that's obviously your choice. But the thing is, the ideas are very strong in that book as well. If you want to become super powerful and get back to your true masculine qualities, you have to sit and realize that, by sitting and looking at pictures, by doing these things, is not the way to go. Now, however, in order to be that strong animal man, you have to have sexual energy. There's no doubt about that. And so what Kendler talks about is that you have to have a sexual energy. You have to have a sexual drive. I mean, when they kind of castrate animals and they fix animals, you can see the whole life goes out of them. They become docile. And so males should never become docile. And so you want that edge to you, you want that attitude, you want that testosterone. Now, by sitting there and not doing anything and transmuting, you're actually going to hurt yourself by not releasing it all, because you're not using that energy for anything else. But the energy, regardless, has to be there. And that's why we go back to the quote saying, well, if you don't look, you're dead. It's like you're dead. If you don't notice these things, you're dead. Now, there's a fine line here. And I realize when we talk about this, there's a fine line. Obviously, temptation is something that you want to avoid. However, the fact of the matter is, you're going to get hit with stuff and you're going to react to it. You're going to get excited. There's no doubt about that, because you're a living, breathing, strong male, masculine male. You're going to react, right? People are going to flirt with you. You are going to react to that. You're going to smile. You're going to get a good feeling. All those things are going to happen. You're going to get excited. Now, what you do at that point, that's a whole different matter. That's when self-control comes into play. And that's why sometimes it's better to flee. Sometimes it's better to just kind of joke it off. Sometimes you can handle it. You have to kind of work through those things yourself. But as DSM Tech talks about, and I think he's actually correct on this, right? Some of the interactions between you and women is something that's going to be normal. You know, I think that if you're in a bad state, as I was, you have to go kind of full extreme monk mode for a while. But even I struggled with that. And I broke monk mode. And the idea is that I'm still back at 100, 20, 30 days, but still, I was at 200 before. Those type of things do happen because you have a high sexual nature, and that is a good thing. Because if you can't transmute anything, you're not going to do anything with the energy anyway. And if you have low testosterone, you're not going to be able to get a lot of things done, and you're just going to be kind of sitting there, and the retention will help you gain control. But the idea is you've got to do something with that energy. So when DSM Tech talks about flirting and things like that, a common thing, I know what he's talking about. You have this sort of interaction with women. Women like to interact with that. Now, you have to kind of make a decision. You got to decide, okay, what am I comfortable with? If you're comfortable flirting with young ladies and it draws your energy up to the point where you can transmute it, that may be okay. That may be okay. That's happened to me many times before. But if you're talking about trying to then take that to the next step and take the girl home and all that kind of stuff, and that's when you now are getting into a situation where you're being tempted to the point where now I can't control it. It's almost like the idea of trying to have intercourse without releasing. Another one of those type of things that is something that seems reasonable, but probably very difficult to accomplish. And so you have to be at a certain point where if you can do that, that's great. And I think a few people mentioned, and it might have been Money Masora 7, but I'm not positive, asked about, does this still happen to me at 61? Well, one of the reasons I've had to do what I'm doing is because of a high level. The Lord has blessed me with a high level of energy, and I have to kind of control that. It's kind of a blessing and a curse at the same time, right? If you have a high level, even at 61, you have to learn to control. And this is kind of why I went to monk mode. But, honestly, if a person walks down the street, I'm going to notice that person. Right? If they're going to flirt with me, I'll smile, I'll interact with them. But the idea is that you have to learn how to not be in those situations where it goes any further. So I think what DSM is talking about is a very interesting point. That's what I want to talk about in the video. I think he's talking about generating your energy, right? Bringing it to the forefront. Now, is that necessary? Well, sometimes you feel it is. Because just like with doing something like, let's say, skydiving, you get the adrenaline flowing, you get excited, all those type of things. Life needs to have a little of excitement. And so I understand where people are coming from on this. Having some flirtation, having some of those interactions, women want to do that with you. And, especially with the one person you have, if you're talking about your wife, of course you're going to do that with her. And so the question then becomes, and I'm not at the point I'm saying, okay, well, this is all bad. Of course it's not. I think the key is going to be moderation, just like anything else the Bible talks about. If you're with your wife, of course you're going to give to your wife. But you're not going to sit there and look at pictures and do all this other kind of stuff with that. If you have a strong, steady girlfriend, you're not going to go ahead and look at a bunch of pictures all the time and do this other kind of stuff, right? You're going to enjoy having time with her and having those interactions. And some of those interactions are going to be kind of, flirtation types of things. But you are in control. You should be in control. As that masculine male, you should be in control. And so that's why the old saying is, if you don't look, you're dead. If you don't look anymore, I don't care what your age is, you're dead. Inside, you're kind of dead. God gave you the ability to be excited about things. If you're not excited at all, then I recommend some of these other things we're talking about. Taking the cold showers, right? Trying to exercise. If you're overweight, lose some weight. Those type of things. Get that back to the point where you can build that testosterone back. But then when you have that, realize you have to control that. Because the name of the game is you don't want to release. And so anytime you move towards that, whether it's emotional or whether it's physical, then you are hurting yourself and hurting God's purpose for you. But on the other hand, we're made to procreate, as I think DSM said too. It's part of life. Procreation is part of life. And so I don't want to come off as this person who's the extreme person saying you can never do this. But on the other hand, I realize the danger of going too far the other way and realizing that you have to gain control of yourself. Now, you choose to do something, well, then that's your choice. You can quickly go back to the other mode when you want to. That's when you know that this can happen. So if you're on a long streak and you release, but then the next day you go back to the streak, well, you haven't lost. You've lost, of course, but not to the point where it becomes a habit again. And this is where it becomes dangerous. And this is why you can't stop your normal activities. There's going to be times where, people are going to talk with you and flirt with you in different ways, and you have to react to that. And I think certainly if you get excited about that, that means that you're healthy. In my book, that means you're a healthy, strong-blooded male. But how you react to that after that is where the self-control comes into me. You cannot help, once again, you can't help the birds flying over your head. You got a naked person walking across your face, you're going to get excited. That's just a normal biological reaction. The back of your mind, it happens. But once you get to that, what are you being led by? Are you being led by that, or are you being led by your intelligence saying, okay, I have self-control here, I have these other situations, I don't have time for this, now it's time to move on. The lions, the people in charge of the jungle, they don't have time for that kind of stuff. They do it when they choose to, when they want to, procreate or whatever, but they're not going to sit there and just do it anytime someone comes up to them. And so I think DSM Tech offers a very good, interesting insight here. And so I shout out to you, DSM. I think it's a really good point you're making. You got to have sexual energy. And Napoleon Hill said this in his famous book, Think and Grow Rich. But you got to learn how to transmute it. You cannot be sitting there and allow it to take you over. And all of a sudden now you're releasing all the time. You have to kind of realize that this is part of life. Procreation is part of life. God has made you to procreate. Now, once again, are you using that energy, those nutrients you have to do better things in life, or are you doing it just to have pleasure and to release all the time, anytime you want to? In this world, we're facing a whole different type of idea here. People have a lot of the young people tend to have less God in their life, and so they're not really thinking about trying to stop and control themselves. A lot of them are out of control. And so what happens is they become a weaker version of themselves, and they end up not having any kind of success. Maybe they have some success, but they end up, self-destructing or kind of destroying themselves in the long run. And that's what happens to all these generations and all these dynasties we've talked about in the past. What do you think happened in the Roman Empire? After a while, the generations lost their values, their moral guidance. They lost the Bible. They lost all kinds of stuff like that. All these dynasties have done that, and they've lost God. And they lose God, all of a sudden now anything is possible. They actually become the God, and so now they can do anything they want to do, and they have no responsibility, and they can kind of just keep going like that. And that's what happens, self-destruction. Sodom and Gomorrah destroyed in an hour or two. Babylon's destroyed in an hour. It doesn't take a long time for God to decide that's it. So you have to continue to work with your faith and hope in God, and just pray that He gives you the strength to deal with these situations. And I've had many of them in the past, right? I could have cheated many times, but I didn't. I could have done things many times, but I didn't, because I knew the consequences were not good. And so even when I was struggling with, releasing and all that stuff, I still never had any kind of issues where I went overboard. Now, it doesn't mean that I wasn't, opportunities weren't there. I think anybody that has a lot of sexual energy, there's always opportunities. But you have to realize, what's the long-term goal? What's the plan long-term? If I do this with this person, right? If I do this with these pictures, what is it really gaining me in the long run? That's where the question is. And you'll find out that there's really not a lot of gain. In fact, it ends up hurting you more than helping you. It may feel good for a few seconds, but in the long run, it ends up hurting you, and you realize how bad that is. On the other hand, if you're having children, if you're with your wife, and all of a sudden now, you have a situation where now you're releasing, that's your choice within that situation. But once again, what you're trying to avoid is this continual idea of releasing and doing it, that kind of thing. So DSM brings up a good point. There's a fine line here we're talking about, especially if you want to have kids, and especially if you're married or you have a really strong, steady girlfriend. But as we talk about in the Bible, and one of the things that we will talk about probably more tomorrow is the fact that God knew this. God knew that men had voracious types of drives, and like animals, right? And so they said, well, if you can't control yourself, then get married, find one person. Because the bottom line is that you really want to use that energy in a lot of other places than just, with a woman. So anyway, great topic, DSM Tech. Thank you so much for this. And once again, the idea is that you have to have sexual energy, right? You have to build that. But you build that to transmute it throughout your body so you have it. Once again, if you don't look, you're dead. And so the flirting part under semen retention will happen. But do you let the birds nest in that head? You can have them flying over your head, but are they going to nest in your hair? Are they going to stay there? Or are you going to kind of move on? All right, guys, have a great day today, and God bless each and every one of you. And remember, every day is a new day to a wise warrior. God bless you guys, and battle on, my friends, battle on.